Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at an event that they're doing for the National Day of the PRC, which of course is for China. This is to celebrate the fact that the People's Republic of China has turned 75 today, since it was formed on the 1st of October 1949. Now, they are doing a bunch of discounted packs and also discounted premiums and a bunch of decals that are available too for you to get. So in this video, we're going to go through all of the premiums, the reviews, and my thoughts on them, and then also at the same time, the bundles and what I think is worth it. If you want to pick anything up, make sure to use my partner link, whether it's for anything on the Gaijin store. You will get a discount, you'll also get my decal in the game, and support the channel at the same time. There is no reason not to use it, basically, since it never gives anybody a negative. So, let's go through the bundles. First of all, we have the Adamant Fortress bundle. This is the Type 69 2G pack, the Type 96A prototype pack together. You also get a unique title, which is the Adamant Fortress title, and also the Great Wall of China decal with it. And then you have Long's Awakening bundle, which is the same name as the Wing Long, if you remember, the drone for the Chinese. This pack is also 50% off, and it has the A5C in it, the J7D, both of their packs, so not just the vehicles, but also additional stuff. Then you have the Long's Awakening title and the J10 decal. So overall, some quite nice stuff in both of those packs. Now, if you already have the Type 69 2G or the ZTZ96A, you can still get the Great Wall of China decal. You just have to play 3 battles in either of the vehicles before the 7th of October, and you'll get access to it. The same goes for the J10 decal with the good old A5C or the J7D. You also can get their titles too. So the Long's Awakening and also Adamant Fortress as well. If you don't want to specifically pick up these bundles with these vehicles, all of those packs are individually 30% off as well. So if you just for some reason want the Type 96 and don't want the full bundle, you can also get a discount on that. One thing I will say is obviously the bundle is a better offer, but also at the same time you would have to grind out, you know, the decal and also the title on top of it. And at the same time, the actual discount is not as much. And if you have something which is already in the pack, you will get the other thing 50% off, which will be quite nice. They're also returning some premiums. So the Type 69 2A and also the T62 number 545 are also back at a 30% discount. They're still pretty pricey, not going to lie. But at the same time, they're both pretty decent vehicles that we will go through. And then also a thing that's available for everybody is you can get the National Day of the People's Republic of China 2024 decal, which is a heart balloon, which is lovely. And all you got to do is play 3 battles using Chinese vehicles at rank 3 or higher, and you'll get yourself this wonderful balloon. If you want to actually grind out that, you have until the 7th of October, and if you want to grind out the titles or the decals, if you already have the premiums, you have until the 7th too. So a pretty decent amount of time to get everything on board. These packs as well are available until the 7th of October, so you have a week to make the decision whether you want the stuff or not. So the first vehicle we're going to have a look at is the T69 2G. This is one that I've actually enjoyed quite a lot over the years, but it does have its issues. You know, it's not a perfect vehicle. The vehicle itself has a lovely gun, has a slightly long reload compared to other vehicles that are around this BR. For example, a lot of 9.0s and 9.3s have a much better reload. For when we were playing the 9.3s for Germany yesterday, you can see the T72 is at 7.1, stuff like the C2 is at 7.7, and then at 6.7 aced. So stuff like the good old T69 is a little bit long in the tooth for the reload. It does does have the 105, and it does have very good rounds. The Type 83 APDS for 9.0 is incredibly good, and also it does have a HEVT alongside the laser rangefinder, which can work in tandem very well to nuke helicopters who are not suspecting it. But because of that reload, and also the elevation of the gun not being the best, sometimes it won't really work too well. So being stuck with being sat with a HEVT round when tanks are coming with that long reload can be a punishing factor. The vehicle does have a bunch of chemical protection on it, which will save you against CAS quite a lot, and also against ATGMs, but generally people are firing darts at 9.0, so it doesn't really work too well. You do get sucked into a black hole which exists at 9.0, which is the Soviet black hole. At 10.0, for some reason, they just don't want to put up a bunch of vehicles for the Soviets. So, for example, the BMP-2M, the Terms, and the 2S-38, and also the T-72s, which are right here. So you do have to be a bit careful of that. Also the 2S-25M, but usually you'll be on their team. So it's not a huge problem. Everybody else, their meta BRs are at 10.3. So you actually fight around your BR quite a lot, and this vehicle can do really well at that BR. It has the stabilizer, it has the pretty decent forward mobility. Backwards mobility isn't great, but it's better than a bunch of other vehicles that's around, and also it does have some extra protection on the back, which isn't going to do too much, but at least it's there. So as a premium, I actually really like this vehicle, and the actual lineup around it is nuts. So you have the TTS, which is an okay box standard vehicle, but then you have both of the ZTZ-88s, which are fantastic vehicles. They work really well alongside the T69. And then also you have the AFT-09, which is one of the better ATGM launchers in the game, and the PTL-02, which is a fantastic light tank. So this 9.0 lineup for you also have the WMA as well. This 9.0 lineup for China is really good. The only thing it's missing is an AA, but luckily, when you have a look at the Air Forces, you have stuff like the F-40, you have stuff like the J-4, and even things like the H-5 that you can bring in with the big old bomb. So it's just in a really nice place right now, just below a meta BR, so therefore you get, down-tiered a lot more into stuff that you can annihilate, and also at the same time, you just have a fantastic lineup around you. So if you do die, you can bring in more vehicles and do pretty well. The next vehicle is the T62. This is just a standard T62. There's no real difference between this and the other T62s in the game. I really enjoy the T62. It's one of those that I've had a great time in over the years. I really like the 115mm. When it comes to the rounds as well, a lot of people always ask me like which round to go for. I always go for the one with more angled pen, just because you're going to face more people with angled armor at this BR than flat armor, so it's better to go for the 3BM4 than the 3BM3, but you also have the heat if you want to use that, but unfortunately you run into a lot of vehicles which have access to pretty good armor around this BR against heat. Now, the T62 isn't perfect. It does have the stabilizer on the gun, which is nice, but once again, has a really long reload, and it is very low silhouette to the ground, which is nice, so its gun depression is actually really good for it, but the long reload does kill it. Another thing is, if you go turret down, which most people do, then it's very hard to one-shot this vehicle. All of the ammo, if you take the first stage, is located in this fuel tank here. So if you just show your turret and nothing else, it's pretty much impossible to one-shot this. Unless you get lucky and like hit it through the breach, you're always going to survive with at least 2 crew. And that's why I really enjoy trading with this thing and have a really good time with it. Whether it's the Soviet one, the Chinese one, or even now the Israeli one, which they added too. So this vehicle feels really nice. It doesn't have access to smoke grenades, it doesn't have access to a top-mounted machine gun, it doesn't have access to laser rangefinder. It is pretty bog standard, it is pretty raw for an 8.7, and the other thing is it doesn't have a lineup. So it does have some aircraft, but no 8.7 tanks apart from these two, which are not exactly great secondaries. These are primary vehicles, which are not very good primaries, but you have to bring them in, otherwise they just get nuked by CAS. You do have the 122, which is a fantastic vehicle, but but you do obviously have to research that out. If you have the 122 and you run it with the T62, you'll have a fantastic time. And you'll have, you know, a really nice 1-2 punch, but at the same time, it's a little bit hard to get this one. If you do have it though, T62 is a great vehicle to run with it. Just make sure that you play around the fact that once you're in the fight, you're going to find it very hard to get out, because you don't have a reload, you don't have the reverse, and you don't have the smoke grenades. But the gun will do a lot of damage against the enemies that you fight, and also with that stabilizer, you can guarantee pretty much one kill. It's just up to you to be in a good position so you don't get overrun by a bunch of other enemies. Then you have the Type 69-2A. So this vehicle is a bit of an odd one, and they bring it back every so often to sell. For me, not a huge fan of it. It is also at rank 5 instead of rank 6, so you lose some of the research bonuses just because it's efficiently research rank 5, 6, and all the way down, whereas these two up here research rank 7 and down, so not as good at that. At 8.3, your lineup is pretty nice though. The PG-09 with the ahead ammunition it has now, ZTZ-59D1 is really good, and also the M113A1 tow is awful, but at least it's nice to have the option. So this vehicle only has the 100mm. It's not as powerful as the other guns, and once again, a bit of a longer reload. But at this lower BR, you're starting to run into vehicles that have that kind of 8.7 standard reload, which is what this has. So it's not as bad as something like the the T69, which has it at 9.0, where a lot of vehicles have a lot lower reload rate. So at least it's not terrible. The cool thing about this vehicle is it does get a laser rangefinder on it at 8.3, and even though it doesn't get access to APFSDS, it does get a pretty good heat FS and also an APDS to use with it. So you can actually snipe with this gun quite effectively and do quite a lot of damage with it. Now, at the end of the day, this is very similar to a T55, so if you enjoy the T55, you'll enjoy this vehicle. It's able to get the shot off very quickly. It's able to go forward pretty well, but not really backwards. It has, you know, the 12.7 on it to do a pretty good job. It's very hard to one-shot this vehicle because, once again, the ammo is in the front here, behind two sets of fuel tanks. The only real way of one-shotting it is penetrating through either the lower glacis here or here, so you hit all three of these crew members in a row. And that's not the easiest thing to do because you can kind of hide this and just go hull down. It's also very hard to overpressure this thing. I know that's a bit weird to talk about, but there's a lot of vehicles around these BRs, like the M60s, where you can shoot these cupolas and it overpressures them. The T55 and Type 69 type vehicles, they have a lot of armor on their cupolas, so it isn't as easy to do, and it kind of blocks the shots. This one does have smoke grenades, which is quite nice, so you can at least reposition with it, but I would personally say it's not as good position as something like the T69 2G with its lineup, but it's in a better position than the T62 right now, just because of the matchmaking it's going to get. There is right now a problem in War Thunder where between 6.7 and 7.3 or 7.7, there's really not a lot of vehicles apart from the Soviets who have a proper 7.3 lineup. So that means the 8.3 vehicles get downtied a lot into 7.7 and into 8.0, where they do incredibly well. And a lot of the 8.0 vehicles, especially for a nation like Germany, which you're going to face a lot, they don't have a lot of stabilizers. You know, the DF-105, the Leopard, the Marder series, the BMPs, and you're able to capitalize on that with this vehicle, with its stabilizer, and annihilate them with it. So it's the same with the Americans with the M60s. They're not at that point yet where you find a ton of stabilizers, apart from on stuff like the AOS, which you can nuke with the rounds that this thing has. So it's actually in a really nice little position. It's just, if you get up-tiered and you start facing some of the 8.7s and 9.0s, the gun just isn't good enough to go through them, and if you run into chemical protection, then you're kind of screwed. I'd still say it's a pretty good pickup though, but I think the pack is a better option. Then you have the ZTZ96AP. Now, this is a vehicle which I have actually played the standard tech tree version of. The only difference between them is this one gets these electro-optical active protection system. The JD3 doesn't really do anything at the BR that it's at. It defends against a mechanic, which you never face at 10.0. So you don't have to worry about it. The P is pretty fun. It's very standard compared to like all of the other MBTs that you'll find from the Soviets and also the Chinese at 10.0. And you know how we talked about how 10.0, 10.3s are very meta BR? That means that you won't face a lot of 11.0s, you won't face a lot of 10.7s, because, well, to be honest, not many of them exist. So you'll get downed a lot at 10.0, and you'll have a fantastic time with a vehicle like this. It has the 125mm Type 88C, which has access to this round, the Type 1985 right here. Remember, as a premium, you get all the modifications for free, and this round is very good for 10.0. It can go through anything you need it to. Obviously, there'll be certain vehicles you have to aim at, but not many. The laser rangefinder means it is very easy to go through stuff too, because it's very easy to aim. It does get thermals, so if people have a crux with thermals, it can help them out. And the armor on it, so the turret itself is fine. It has this composite armor here, which will stop a lot of stuff, and it has the upper glacis. The problem with this vehicle and a lot of Chinese vehicles is they have a huge hole at the bottom, so you can just pen straight through this. This is usually where you shoot a Chinese vehicle. Just watch out for the fuel tanks, because they will eat rounds, or just shoot the breach, which is where most people shoot these vehicles. With the breach, though, you won't take out the vehicle. You might take out the autoloader nowadays, so that would make it harder to fire back, but generally it's not too bad. Now, a lot of people always talk about the gun depression on this thing, but you have to understand that these vehicles are a lot lower silhouette compared to a lot of the vehicles that they fight, so the gun depression doesn't really matter too much. -5 degrees is completely fine. One of the bigger issues is that this thing can't reverse. So once you're in battle, very hard to get out. So just make sure that you understand that. And also the 7.1 reload on this gun. So a lot of vehicles have got buffed over the years of this BR, looking at the Abrams and many others, and they just have insane reloads. And if you have a look at stuff like the 2S38, for example, the Puma, that's here, and also stuff like the Abrams. So 7.1 is actually one of the worst reloads nowadays around this BR. It's the standard for the T72s and the ZTZ96s, and it kind of sucks. It does mean that a lot of the times you can get good follow-up shots off. One of the cool things about this round, by the way, is it's 4 kilos and also very good muzzle velocity, so not hard to kind of penetrate with it, with the muzzle velocity it has, because you can be very accurate with it, but also the projectile mass means that it does good spread after the hit, which is lovely. But the major thing is you'll do a lot of damage to somebody, and they have the opportunity to maybe not do as much if you are hull down, which you always should be in a vehicle like this. You need to hide this area, and you need to hide this area, because people will just go through it like butter. The other part is you do get a funny HE, so you can actually overpressure targets through the cupolas, and since, people do hide quite a lot, it can be quite fun to do. So I would give that a go if you can, but just make sure that you understand that you aren't able to reverse, and that is going to be a killer for a lot. At 10.0, you do have the ZTZ96A standard. You do also have the Zibidi, which you can run with it, and also the QM506 if you have it. It's kind of a weird set of BRs for China because of the fact that you don't have a full lineup, but generally it's fine. Like, you'll be okay with those two MBTs. You don't have a ton of support, I suppose, unless you have the A5 there. And it would be nice to have a better AA, but the PG-04 isn't terrible. It's just one of those where you have to rely on the IR-guided missiles, which doesn't always work too well. So then we have the A5C. This vehicle has been kind of a thorn in the side of many for a long time in aerialistic, which is why it's higher in BR in air than it is in ground. In ground, it's not really that good. It does have access to CCIP for the rockets and bombs, so you can get pretty, good bomb drops off with the CCIP, but it's at a BR where you're starting to run into a lot of IR, missile SAMs, and also just generally really good gun SAMs. So even with like the 750s or the 250s, whichever one you want to bring, you can get good bomb drops off, but you're gonna not survive along the way. The A5 is not what we class as a maneuverable vehicle. Its elevator is not very strong at high speeds, so once you're in, you're probably going to get taken out. The reason you play a vehicle like this is because of this right here, and it is the two Magic ones. Now, Magics are the strongest missile at this BR. They have incredible speed, they have incredible acceleration, and incredible overload. A lot of the time, even they'll go through countermeasures, which is hilarious, but obviously countermeasures is the best way of trying to stop them, since they don't have an IRCCM like the Magic 2s. So what you do with this vehicle, because it is a bit of a barge to fly, unless you are in a down tier, then obviously it feels quite good. What you do is you set up on enemies in a realistic, you fire the two missiles, and then afterwards you use your speed to get into a position to be able to attack with the guns in turn 1 scenarios. Because this thing has the worst guns at the BR that it's at. It has the 23mm, which have a terrible fire rate and also don't really do a lot of damage either. So you are very reliant on those two missiles, which you find on this vehicle. It does have enough countermeasures to be able to survive for a long time, so you don't have to worry about that. And the other part of this vehicle is obviously its performance in hitting ground targets in air. Now, the buff to incendiaries means that this actually can get some bases now, which is pretty cool. So you can take the incendiaries and take the magics, hit with the incendiaries, reset, wait for the battle, and then use the magics on targets, and then, you know, you can have a really good time. It's a lot harder to do nowadays because more stuff has countermeasures around this BR, but you'll still be able to hammer people with it. You'll still be able to do well. Just understand the airframe is not the best at this BR. Instead, what is the best is the missiles. So you have to play around those and get used to using them pretty effectively. The last vehicle is the J7D. This one is not one I've ever really enjoyed a huge amount, but recently I did respade the J7E, which is at the similar BR, and had a really good time in it. So maybe the J7D is in a much better place than I give it credit for. So the J7D gets the PL7s, which are the fun, like very good rear aspect missiles. It also gets the PL5Bs, which are the ones on the J7E, which I really enjoy. But the PL7s are the reason why it's at 11.0 and why it's a little bit higher. So these missiles are great, but it means that you have a fundamental problem, which is you don't have any other types of ordnance to run with it. Now, as somebody, as I said, who spaded the J7E at 10.3, this isn't as much of a problem because you don't face stuff like semi-active radar homing missiles that much. You can dogfight more and it's a little bit easier. But at a higher BR of 11.0, you have to deal with stuff like the F4S. You have to deal with stuff like the F14A. Which, well, sorry, you don't have to deal with this, but you do have to deal with stuff like the F4S, which turns up, which makes your day a living hell. And that is the problem with a vehicle like this. One of the vehicles I spaded more recently was the MiG-21 BIS, which is 11.3 at the BR in air. Now, this vehicle, the J7D, is slightly lower BR than it. It is very fast, because of this really nice Shenyang Liming WP13FI engine, so you can set up where you want to fight from, and also it has this awful radar, which is completely worthless. But with the missiles that you have to be at pretty much dogfighting distance, and a lot of the time when you play this BR, you won't be allowed to do that because of the fact that you have the semi-actives around the place. So that is the kind of most annoying thing about it. If you get really good matchmaking and you don't run into that 12.0 area, which is something even at 11.0 for me I ran into quite a lot, then you'll have a good time. Like, the missiles will work really well. You'll be able to set up very well with this vehicle with the speed that it has. It does have access, to countermeasures, which will mean that you're able to be in a great position. And the 23s, by the way, are awful, but you don't play this for the guns. You play this for the missiles. But the fact is, I just worry about these types of vehicles because they just don't have access to mechanics, which others do. So therefore, it puts you in a negative position before you start. It also does have secondaries, but I wouldn't bother with them. The reason you play this vehicle is to do this, and to hammer people with the missiles, and then to go home, and then reset and do it again. And as somebody who's enjoyed the MiG-21MF, I've enjoyed the MiG-21 SMT, you can do that with the MiG-21 platform, or the J7 platform, but at 11.0, you're stretching it, and that's a bit of the problem. So if you enjoy that type of playstyle, going in while your team is engaged, and then, setting up 2-on-1s, firing the missiles, and then getting, 2, 3, or 4 kills, hoping to, catch people without countermeasures, and then zooming out again, kind of like you do with the F-104, you'll really enjoy this vehicle. But if you prefer the dogfighting style, if you prefer being the out-and-out aggressor, you're probably not going to have as good of a time in a vehicle like this. Maybe the A5 at the lower BR is the way to go. So that's my thoughts on all of these premiums. Hopefully you have a bit of fun with them. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.